For me to confirm an awakening experience, there need to be three things that I'm looking for. And this isn't necessarily what someone's reporting. I'm looking for it in their behavior and their demeanor, their energy. And the three components are a deep experience of absence of self, what traditionally is no self, we call it in Buddhism. And normally when we are in touch with self, like if we were to meet someplace and didn't know each other, we might say, "Oh, what do you do?" Or some version of "Who are you?" And we go through the list. I'm this age, gender, partnered, not partnered, work, schooling, whatever. And so these are the markers of me, the way we know ourselves. And we share that with others, and that's how we think they get to know us. But the absence of self is, if I were to ask you, "Who are you?" and you turned in, there wouldn't be anything. You wouldn't feel like you're unknown, but you wouldn't be able to find, I went to this university, I work in this profession. All of that would just be slightly out of reach. And there's just a sense of, I don't know who I am. And it's a very, very deep quality when that happens. It's quite impactful for most everyone. And interestingly, it's the place where people feel the most anxiety about awakening. The idea that myself is going to be suspended for a period of time there's a reaction, a kind of a survival reaction to that of no, I'm not doing that. Because I've taught these retreats for years, and a couple of years ago I had somebody who had been on probably a dozen of these retreats say to me, I said, "Well, the personality doesn't get awakened." And he was like, "What?" He said, "I've been coming to these retreats for decades or a decade, and I somehow always thought the personality was what woke up." And I said, "No, it's not part of the equation at all. It's not part of the experience." And he was just dumbfounded, and I was so surprised because I do say it all the time. But that's part of it, is we're electing to turn away from the usual, the way we know ourselves. We're turning toward the mystery, and we're opening to the mystery. We don't know what's there. We don't know how it's going to impact us. And that's the cool part. That's what's exciting to do. And the irony is, everybody that has at least a no-self experience, if not an awakening, their comment is, "Oh my God, is this freeing?" It really is liberating to not have that me just pounding, just pressing on me. To have a relief from that is just wonderful. It's a kind of inner vacation. So it's always this irony that people are so worried about this, and everybody loves it. Everybody says, "Oh my God, can I live like this?" I said, "Well, sure, but it takes time. You've got to work at this. It's not just, nobody, in my opinion, including the Buddha, had an experience that eliminated all the personal material. I don't think that's possible. In Buddhism, we hold it that way, but I think it's the ideal rather than the reality." So just know that the no-self experience is not an unwelcome event. When it happens, again, everybody that I've worked with over 20 years of teaching, it's been a great source of comfort and liberation and freedom. The other component is unity, is love. It's being in intimate contact with the oneness that's everything. So we can pick up the smallest little bit. There's a koan about somebody takes a blade of grass and puts it in the earth, and the koan is something about, and a temple manifests. Well, there's no building that manifests out of a blade of grass. That's not what that's pointing to, but it's pointing to the totality, the everything that's contained, even in the blade of grass. A temple is in the blade of grass. That's the experience. So the oneness is an amazing experience too. Everything is love. Everything is love. Everywhere that you look, everything you perceive, all of it is love. The book is love. The Roxu case is love. All of it. And so it's this great experience when these happen together. There's no sense of self and love. There's just this beautiful experience. And then finally, the third component is the recognition. This is truly what I am, not truly who I am. Who is another way of attaching identity, but it's what I am, truly and thoroughly what I am. And again, that's a relief. When that happens in the Zen tradition, we call it Kensho, which in its literal translation means seeing one's true nature or seeing into true nature. So that is what's happening, is we're seeing into true nature. And people can have either the no self or unity experience independently. And that's fairly common in the groups I have. A lot of folks have experienced one or the other. But it's that third component of recognition. And really, awakening is the absolute awakens to itself in this consciousness, in that consciousness. So I'm not awakening. There's no Stephen that's awakening. Awakeness is awakening. The absolute's awakening to itself here. And that's an important experience too. Because for a period of time, and if we talk about duration or impact of awakening, the question is really, how long is the sense of self suspended? How long is the usual me not readily at hand? And for some people, it's minutes, others days, some even weeks and months. And the longer that's suspended, the more impactful the awakening is. So in the Zen map, we have sort of three categories, I guess, of realization. There's Kensho, which again, any first awakening would fall in the Kensho category. And in Japan, they use the word Kensho pretty generically, the way we use the word awakening. So any awakening one could call Kensho. I'm a little more particular with it, where it depends on the duration and the depth, what name I might use. Because the next level of awakening is called Satori, and that's a deeper awakening. It's more thoroughgoing. There's a big shift that happens I'll talk about tomorrow. But the Kensho is just any awakening where these three components are present. I mean, if somebody has an awakening that's less than, say, 30 minutes or an hour, typically that's not very impactful. It normally has to be at least hours or days for it to really have an impact on our psychology. And to know that we're going to be working the topic of awakening, and we're going to be looking at the patterns of the self ongoing. I tell people I don't see that there's any finish line, either to the depth of awakening, the breadth of awakening, nor personal material. We've got so much stuffed in the basement. You know, the subconscious and unconscious, there's so much material, and it just keeps percolating up. Whenever we're ready, it'll percolate up to be worked. We work it, and then there's nothing to be worked for a while. And then something will get triggered. And so I tell my students after awakening, watch for your overreactions. Watch for those strong reactions to something very innocent. That's tipping you off. Something is getting triggered in you. And that's what you want to be working with and attending.